All right. Hello, everyone. You're listening to Celluloid Chatroom. I'm Madeline.
And I'm Sahan. And
And
today yeah. Oh, sorry.
I don't know. Today we're
Uh,
screwing up the intro.
yeah, today we're watching Midnight at the Paradise. It's directed by Vanessa Matsui. Well, I mean, to just summarize it, it's about, a man who lives in Montreal. And he's engaged to be married. But he decides that he needs to reach out to an old flame, but and visit her in Toronto. But his plans go a little bit awry when his girlfriend decides to tag along. So I think that about captures the plot. Though I suppose, I mean, to kick things off, that's how I summarize the plot. But I think that the main character is the woman who he's going to meet, right? But I felt that that was more concise if I just said that.
Yeah, that's good. Sorry, I had like my microphone cut out, or like my headphones came out for a second, so I was fixing that, which is why I was making panic expressions during your explanation. Anyways, edit this part out.
Okay. Yeah, so where to begin with this film? Um yeah, Madeline.
It was really fun seeing Toronto portrayed in a movie, especially like an area that I'm really familiar with. I thought that was really cool. There was so much about this film that was just like Canada, like lots of like I mean, like specifically Toronto, right? Like lots of references to Toronto artists, like the Paradise Theater. Obviously, I'm sure you've been there. I've been there. I
Never.
wasn't never really. You've never been to the Paradise?
No. Yeah.
Okay, I've been a few times. I'm not like in love with all their programming and stuff, but I went to see Hedwig and the Angry Inch sing along.
Oh
That was
yeah.
awesome. And then more recently, I went to see, I think it was a German film about like an angel, and it was kind of old, and I did fall asleep, which like wasn't my best moment, but I did not like that film. So those are like my Paradise Theater experiences, but I can say that the chairs are really comfy.
Okay.
um, it's a nice theater.
All right. All
Um,
right. I'll take your
I'm
word
surprised
for
you
it.
haven't been there.
Yeah. I don't know. There are a lot of things that I haven't done. Uh
It's fair.
yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I will say though that I don't know if I mean I didn't maybe connect to some of the references regarding Toronto, but I don't know I don't know if the film moved me at all in any way. I did like the movie.
Yeah, I was this wasn't my favorite movie that I've watched. I will be honest. I did like tear up a little bit at the end, but I tear up at most movies.
You know,
So
what you make an interesting point. I don't think it was a good movie. I don't recommend this to anybody except film students. But like the ending was in a weird way. Yeah, it was kind of moving, and I felt almost embarrassed that I was a little bit moved by it because it felt like like an editing trick. There was no weight behind any of the any of the characters' decisions, and like I didn't find it believable. Like I didn't find it believable. I felt like I was just watching like something staged, and yet because of just a trick with pacing, it felt that ending actually was like a little bit moving, and it was wild. It was wild that even I hate to be critical, so critical, but not very good movie can still have those moments.
yeah, I thought so too. But then I think that like I don't want to spoil the film. I don't think that there's a way that I can like discuss the ending scene without yeah, how are we gonna do this? A lot of what I want to say like has to do with what happens in the okay, maybe a mild to heavy spoiler warning up ahead. with the way that relationships were uh, dissolving kind of at the end, even though they didn't really dissolve at the end. Like, I was so unhappy with how that played out, but still touched by the ending. And I think like that the father, Max's role kind of distracted from how just unhappy I was with how the other couples ended up. Because like that was like I do think that that scene was really touching, and like Max's character like was complex, I do think. Like I think that he was one of the best characters in the
Mm.
film. Not that he was a very I don't know if he was a very likable one. I Most of these characters I didn't really like that much, to be honest, but like I do think that that was like a really powerful and emotional scene. It's just that like by the end of it I'm like, "Oh wait, like I'm still not happy with the other stuff that happened in the ending," you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah, definitely. I mean, like, we should clarify, like, who the hell Max is. So in this movie, so remember, there is a so the woman in question, the main character, she is effectively planning on cheating on her husband. And that's kind of where the film starts and where the man from Montreal comes in, right? So the woman is called Iris, and her father, Max, is, I mean, he's on the verge of dying. He's uh, he's lived a very kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Excessive lifestyle, and it seems like that's caught up to him. And Yeah, he is a completely I mean, he's awful. Like, he's the kind of person who will tell his ex-wife that he cheated on her, and that's okay because he was honest with himself about who he who he is. And then subsequently, when she reacts to it, he will say that he when I have that interaction written down somewhere. He will say that she knew that what she was getting into, and so that makes it somewhat less hurtful, apparent, or well, I mean, he doesn't give a shit about her feelings or really anybody else's feelings. And I do agree that he was the most complex character in the film, but all of these characters aren't very complex. Like, this is a very kind of two-dimensional, very very childish person, very childish old man, to lacks just empathy. There's any empathy, really. And I think that is actually, that's my fundamental criticism with the whole film, is that, you will have Alex, who is planning on cheating on his fiance, right? The man from Montreal, that is.
mhm.
And it's not even, it's first of all, it's not clear why he's getting married to her in the first place. You know, it's it, her reasons, his fiance's reasons, is simply that she knows he'll be decent to him. Which again doesn't really make. I mean, that's not the foundation of a marriage. Uh, and mind you, all these people are in their 30s or close to 40, really. So,
Yeah,
uh,
Alan Hako is definitely older, I think, than the other cast members.
right.
Um, yeah. No, the whole like the reason that she wants to get married is because she like fundamentally believes that he'll be decent. I don't know. The whole Anthea's character, I was one of the characters that I liked more, and the one who I thought kind of just got shafted by the way that this film like played out. Like she got like the kind of worst end of the stick, like on every and I liked her. Like she was like the character that I liked the most. And it's just like and now she's gonna marry a guy who treats her like garbage. And she like yeah, the fundamentally like he says, like he doesn't obviously like it when she says that. But the idea that like the reason you want to take a relationship past like being like an unmarried relationship to like taking the plunge of like marriage and commitment, and her saying like, oh, the reason I can make this commitment is because I believe that you're like just a decent guy and that I can count on you to be a good person. Like to me, I'm like, yeah, that's like, yeah, of course you'd want to marry like a good, like a fundamentally decent, like maybe the wording's a little cold there, but then he's like, oh my God, that's such a heavy burden. I was like, well, it doesn't, I was like, it doesn't surprise me that this guy would think that it's like a heavy burden to have to like be decent to your spouse throughout the marriage. But I was like, the bar is on the floor. Like, yeah, be good to your wife, man. Like, oh, so when he's
I,
like talking about that, I was like, yeah, she's not being unreasonable. Like, she might have worded that coldly, but like, wanting to be treated well by your partner, like, give me a break. She's like, fine.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the bare minimum, right? And the reason why I brought up that line is that, like, at that point, I think when she said it, I kind of believed her. Like, you know, I believe that was all she was thinking, based on their past, like what the dialogue we'd seen up until that point, and what we would see subsequently. Because yeah, the bar was, her bar is just on the floor, and I actually didn't like her at all. I didn't like anybody in
Oh,
the film.
oh no.
I just found her. I don't know. Like, well, I think with her the problem is that she, you know, she doesn't have to put up with this, right? And that's kind of irritating. But also, I think she slipped into being formal. There's a lot of like dialogue that feels a bit clunky and formal in the film. And I think that she had maybe a lot of that. And, it was all like one note, oh, I'm happy to be around Alex. Like, there's no reason why he would hate this. Just so that we can emphasize that he's a bad person and then just be frustrated that we have to watch him. He has no save the cat moment, nothing. We just have to watch this guy, you know?
Yeah, in the film, like, I didn't have a reason to root for the couples. I found like that was like something that I struggled with. Is
Mm.
like that's why it's like singling out Anthea as like the character that I wanted. Like she was where my emotions were the most vested, was because it was like she's the singular character, but that doesn't make me vested in her relationship with Alex because like what have I seen other than like them having sex about the positivity in the relationship? Which kind of brings me to, I also just found discussions of sex in this movie to be like bizarre. Like to be like they'd be like sitting like the vibes are already kind of weird when they sit down at the diner, like the two couples, and it's like it's so immediately obvious that Iris and Alex have like a romantic past. So like when they and like I can see that like when they're like married and there's a fiance, how you wouldn't be like immediately worried that they're gonna like cheat or something. It's like, oh, she's seen like her boyfriend from 20 years, like, yeah, so I'll get a drink. Like I can see how that wouldn't be a red flag, but then to like sit down and all talk about sex, right? Like just like on the table. You're like, yeah, no, we have to write sex into the schedule if we want to have it. I was like, whoa, what is going on here? Like that is like that's now I'm like I don't buy it anymore. And the fact that it came from Jeff too, who's like an ER doctor and this kind of like stand-up guy, and then he's like randomly disclosing these like intimate details about him and his wife's relationship, and she's like, don't stop it, and she seems so guilty the whole time. Like she's acting so guilty, and she hasn't even and she hasn't even done anything, and she's so guilty the whole time. And but like she is like, can you please stop talking about your sex life? And I was like, yeah, she's guilty, but like I see what you're saying. Stop talking about her sex life.
Yeah.
And just like I don't know, talk about like why movies make people movies make people want to have sex. And I was like, the film's relationship with movies, I also like I do feel like I can see that there was like a lot of love put into this movie, so I feel bad that I had so many issues with it, but I just truly like I can't have an honest conversation about the film without just like bringing up the things that I struggled like to grasp with it. And like the way
Don't
that the film
apologize for
talked
that. Yeah.
about movies is just like as if movies are dying. And I think that like something that happens kind of a lot in like film is like movies can be like a little bit like movies love to
Yes.
do that, and it's like it happens in books too, but it like irritates me more in movies, and I don't have a reason for that, it just does. And the whole time people were like, "Oh, movies are dead." Like they kept saying that movies are dead, and I was like, "What?" Says who? Like what? Movies are alive and well. Like I I hate the cynicism of like old media is always the best, you know, like oh, old movies are better than new movies, movies dying. And that happens with music too. Like, have you ever talked about music with a boomer? Like, they act as if like nothing good has come out since Led Zeppelin, and that's so not true, you know? And it's just like it felt like kind of a continuation of that where they're like movies are dying. And I know that like theater attendance is down, sure. And like that like the climate of watching movies with streaming and stuff is changing. And you know, for better or worse, I can't say, even though I obviously support the actors and writers strike, so I do think that streaming has its issues. But like movies aren't dying. They're just not. And the way that like the film was talking about like, oh, what a lost cause to try to say like to talk about movies or try to save the Paradise Theater, which I looked into it, not extensively, but I was trying to see was the Paradise Theater going to close, and it looked like in 2006 around then it was slotted to be turned into a pharmacy, but then that didn't happen. It had a renovation recently. Because I was thinking about that this time too. I was like, is this film trying to keep the paradise alive? Like I've been there recently. It looks pretty good. It looks like it's doing pretty well. So it was weird to me that they like maybe I don't again, I don't claim to know as much about the Paradise Theater through my quick Google search as the filmmaker, but it was just really bizarre to me that like this kind of idea of like, and I know that was tying into the Time is a Goon thing, which we can talk about after, but like the idea that film was dying, I just had a qualm with. And then when they go to the Breathless screening and they're sitting in the theater and like you can only see like a couple other people in the theater. I was like, if you like, I've been to a Breathless screening in Toronto. Granted, not at the
Right.
Paradise. It was full. Like it was at TIFF. It was a big theater at TIFF at the Lightbox. Like on like a weekday. Like it was just like any old weekday midday a Breathless screening will fill up a theater in Toronto. So like I just had said like I was like I don't buy this. Like
Yeah.
that's just Toronto has such like if you're going to attack the film culture of a city in Canada, you couldn't have chosen a worse city than Toronto. That has this like
Yeah.
beautiful, amazing, diverse and this like
Has so
film
many
is
film
like
festivals, not
yeah,
just
and this
TIFF,
film is
just
like
so many.
part of it, like has been through this circuit of like film, you know, and there's like established Canadian talent in it. And so it's just like it's really bizarre to me that like that's kind of the stance that the film took on movies, even it like just even if it was like as a metaphor, it's not a metaphor that I can buy into.
I think well, Madeline, before you get too angry, I think that I think that it is laziness in a way, like not laziness, it's just sort of like we're just going to um you know do some introduce plot points that are convenient but not necessarily representative of Toronto. But I will say that this is the first film I've seen with the overt Jean-Luc Godard references, and there are quite a few of them out there. And I've had my fill. I'm done. I don't want any more. I've seen Breathless. I've seen a few Godard films. Um, like, dude, does anybody actually like Godard as much as this film would suggest? Like, seriously, like,
I don't it's not like I walked out of the theater after seeing Breathless and thought like, okay, let's sex. I need sex now. Like, who can I have mind blowing sex with? Like, no, like I mean, certainly that's not how I think of Breathless. That was not my
Absolutely
reaction
not.
to
Yeah,
it.
it's not a sexy film. Like, fuck off with that. Like, really, like
I know.
it's
I mean, the
it's
main guy's like pretty handsome, but like, yeah, I don't walk out of the theater like, Flash, give me a man, you know?
I mean, I guess there is like a certain kind of like, it's like one of the first films, if not the first film that really like started to examine film itself, right? And so, it's definitely like when he's pretending to be Humphrey Bogart, there's like a certain kind of cool factor to it. Like just these little elements together and you're just like, yeah, I respond to that. And then yeah, there are moments like that, certainly, but it's too, I mean, it's still like a somewhat, yeah, I mean, it's not the most it's not a romantic film at all. It's not a, I wouldn't say it's a sexy film. It's I don't know, the film's attitude towards Breathless was what was weird, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I again, it just did not work for me. And I yeah, I don't know.
I do
The
want to
empty
get
theater at Breathless.
okay, okay, but I do want to ask you a question. This is um I mean, this isn't really related to Breathless or the Toronto film scene, but there was just this one moment that kind of bothered me in the film, and that's when Alex, the guy from Montreal, visits, or you know, he kind of invites himself to Iris's house, and so they're
I think I
there.
know the minute you're gonna tell me about. I think I know what this is, but go ahead.
So he's there, um, you know, and the way, you know, couples do, or like an early couple does, you know, like she sort of insults him, and he says, you know, whoa, that's kind of offensive, you know, like, what the hell, right? And then she just sort of smiles, you know, in a very sort of like flirtatious way, you know, like sort of like the Joker, you know, like smiling upwards, uh, and then says, I'm sorry, you've just left me. Your presence has left me all discombobulated, and I just, I just like that line is just like outrageous. I don't know. I just had to bring it up. I Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. But like I that's not what I thought you were gonna say
So
because
what did you
like
think? I was gonna say.
I like this might have been like truly one of the most out of pocket insane moments in a movie that I've seen in ages. And while I like and I'll give it this, it was so funny. Like this was so funny to me. And I don't know if that's what they were going for, but like it was so good and
What?
so
What?
funny. Is the moment where she's like looking at her daughter, like her daughter's asleep and she's in the doorway and she's like gazing down at her daughter and like contemplating the way that she's like kind of like messing up like her marriage right now, like what's going on and stuff. And then all of a sudden, Alex comes from behind her like a creep
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then says, like a creep, he says, I wish that was our child. What?
Yeah, that was so weird.
I mean, okay, sorry if anyone's like listening on microphones and or on headphones and I'm like blowing their ears out, but what on like I like had to pause the film and just like that is the creepiest thing I've ever seen someone say in a movie. Like to like look at someone else's kid and like kind of like be leering over their shoulder and then go, I wish that was our kid. Jail. Jail. Kick this man out of your house. And then, to Iris's credit, she did. She's like, what is wrong with you? But like, I feel like her issues with that were different than my issues with that. Because she was like, you said you didn't want kids. And I was like, that's the creepiest thing you could have ever possibly said. Like, that is so profoundly weird to do.
It's
Like,
weird.
looking over the sleeping kid. Oh my god.
Yeah, but like, you know, that was one of those moments where it felt almost like a thought experiment. Like I had to sort of think, like why did this make me, you know, react this way? You know, like how did this provoke this kind of reaction? And I don't know if I like it was like just like no, like don't say that.
Okay,
Um,
so you didn't
but
have the same like visceral reaction to that as I did, I guess.
I did not find it funny. I just was like, dude, like, what is
Oh,
like
like
your issues just keep compounding. Like, why are you like this?
just a
Um,
walking red flag.
yeah. No, he's awful, isn't he? He's just Alex, just awful person. Um, but yeah, no, it's like a such a weirdly like yeah, like let's replace this kid and let's you know I wish that were mine, you know, like you know that was the feeling I had. Like he just wanted like the kid as a stamp of his like yes, I belong here because I don't know, like you can't replace a kid like that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And then at one point, like later in the film, when he's trying to convince her to abandon her husband, he's like, he just wants to possess you. I'm like, really? I'm like that because I was like, he's not husband of. Well, I mean, he's not husband of the year, maybe. Even though I really didn't have much of an issue with him, but like, okay, sure, like he's got his stuff, whatever. He like at no point did I find that he was like overly present. Like he was surprisingly cool with like a lot of the like lines that were crossed. Like he just like let things play out. So it's like, what do you? He's not being possessive. You're the one who wants his baby. Like, oh my god, you're the one who's like, oh, I'm in town because I need to see your dad, and I wish I had your kid. And I was like, that's a little weirder. Like he's not. The husband's not possessive, so I thought that was but I mean that could just be like more evidence that Alex is a douchebag. That I don't know how much that moment's actually meant to speak to Jeff or, meant to speak to
No, but
like
like
Alex's kind of slime bagginess.
no, but like I mean, we are supposed to kind of root for like Alex, aren't we? Like in a way, we're kind of supposed to think he's like a normal, like fully functional human, and
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because I think you might be doing the film a little bit of a disservice
oh,
if you think that Alex is like necessarily someone there. Like I think he's a character that they like tried to nuance to like I in my opinion not to like any amazing success, but like I could see that there's like things about him that they tried to kind of build him up as a character and give him his own perspective and stuff. I don't think that he was a character that we were supposed to root for, especially the way that the beginning is framed, where like at the beginning we're not exactly sure what his relationship is to Iris. It's like, oh, is he having an affair? And so then everything that his girlfriend does, you're like, oh, like you're looking at him, you're like, oh, like he. So I thought that he was kind of from the start framed as a bit of a sketchy guy. So I wouldn't just throw like away like the assumption that we are supposed to think he's a stand-up guy because I'm not sure how much we are supposed to root for him or if he's just like sees himself as as the like tragic breathless hero when really he's just like this asshole.
right. But I do think that the film kind of glosses over the weird kind of aspects of his character, and so like if in a movie which actually wanted to examine this kind of weird, personality, somebody who hasn't completely matured, who no, but not complete, just somebody who's immature, somebody who lacks empathy, those moments we would be talking about it differently. It would just be like, oh wow, like, we've just witnessed like how this man thinks, and the result is just outrageous and, a revelation, I wish that were our daughter would be like the revelation of the film, right? But it
Yeah.
was anything but, right? It was more like he had to say something weird in this scenario. So we'll give him this line, not realizing that it is really weird, and
Uh,
it changes the tone of the film. There's a lot of moments in the film where like like for instance, I found this with the movie critic, the character of Max, the guy on death's door. He would keep like saying outrageous things to his ex-wife, and then they would kind of go back to that quasi flirty, weird whatever the fuck they were doing. And I just kind of I didn't think you could get back, when you say something like, yeah, I cheated, but I don't feel any remorse, I don't give a shit about your feelings. When you say something like that, there's no way the tone of the conversation can return back to whatever
yeah,
it
yeah, and she's
was.
like, "Oh, gotta stick something up your ass now," like, and then it kind of the comedy and the flirtation. Yeah, I don't know, but like, just to kind of go back for more second, I still do think that like that moment for Alex, like, I do think that was supposed to make him look pathetic, and I think they kind of did it again at the end where he goes to the hotel and like takes like a shot of whiskey or something, and then like gets naked and goes into the bed. Like, I think that he was kind of supposed to look like a loser or like this man baby kind of like who's like still totally lost and like the you're sitting there being like has he even like said anything to Anthea, like where's she, like I don't know, like I do think that they knew what they were doing when they gave him like an insane line, and then like I do think that they were critical of him even though he's a character that like there is like hope for like in aspects of the film. I don't know. But
I
like to kind of touch on like, oh sorry, you go ahead.
No, I mean, yeah, okay. Like, I I do think that, like, I don't think that he's like your average kind of protagonist, but I do think that like the filmmakers, or like the only way to make sense of this from a production perspective is that, like, yeah, like we're kind of supposed to root a little bit for, we're kind of supposed to think that Alex is like not the worst person, when he really
Yeah.
kind of is, and so they
Well,
do
yeah, I
think.
mean, so is Iris.
Oh yeah, no, no, don't get me wrong. They're both awful. And honestly, like, fuck Anthea and Jeff. Like, for A, putting up with this bullshit, and B, just like
No,
like
poor
like
Anthea and Jeff.
no, I mean, like, they're also kind of just bland characters.
Yeah,
Like, they're
but I
just
mean,
too good. Like, they're just
they're the
too
ones
good.
that are like for me in a film, and this might just be like a boring kind of tendency I have in film watching, but like there needs to be for me to like be able to deal with a film full of unlikable characters, there needs to be like an anchor to reality. Like an anchor
Hmm.
to like reasonableness somewhere. And I do like and Jeff does have some crazy lines. Like there's one point where he like a doctor, like this man is a doctor, talks about how marriage is more difficult for men because of I wrote it down because of their biological imperatives.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
against the biological imperative. I was like, you are a doctor. Like don't spread that shit. Yeah, like that like I was like, no. Like Jeff and I liked him throughout the I mean Anthea too like when she kisses Jeff, I like it just seemed to me like the character was like I was like just like I wish they didn't like write that into her line here. Like it seems like they're trying to like kind of dirty the hands of Anthea and Jeff in that scene, which I like which I just was like, "Ugh," but they're like the characters that I was like holding on to for like, some like semblance of like grounding kind of
I think that.
but when I really just did not like Alex or Iris at all.
Right, right. But I think that with that kiss that you mentioned, so yeah, I mean, spoilers, but yeah, I guess,
Yeah.
tough.
I'm like I
Uh,
kind of warned you guys earlier. Spoilers.
so, um, yeah, like when Iris kisses Jeff, at that moment I just was like, yeah, this had to happen from like a story beats perspective, because she's gonna get back with Alex. And so, like, I just kind of, it was just an easy kind of prediction, right? And yeah, like the thing about this film, like from a screenplay perspective, just sorry, from like, yeah, just from like a story beats perspective, screenplay perspective, is that it's like they get all of these story beats that can make sense on paper, but the execution is just so bizarre. Like, the dialogue is bizarre. Um, yeah, the direction, like that, hence why I brought up that um discombobulated line. Like, that line, like, you can only say that ironically. That word, discombobulated.
Discombobulated.
You can never say that like sincerely. You can never say that flirtatiously. You can only say that ironically. And even then, it doesn't really make sense for like a 40-year-old woman. Like, I find it a bit weird that she'd use like meme language, essentially, right? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't
It's
make
like
any sense.
the word discombobulation, like the only reason I even know what that is because when I was like a little kid, one of my uncles would be like, I'm gonna discombobulate you guys. And like it was like a game we'd play. We'd be running around, or like I'm the discombobulator. Like it was like that. Like it was like a joke word. So yeah, like that's probably the only reason I remembered that moment because to me, like I think that you had like more of an issue with that line of dialogue, and I had like issues with like like I think maybe we just like have different bones to pick with like the certain aspects of the film.
I,
Um,
but I will say though that, like, there's like some, like, a part of me just kind of like shut down watching this film. So it's not like I will, I could take that line when he's like standing over her shoulder and he looks at her kid and says, "I wish that was mine." Like, I I just, yeah, no, like, I don't, I yeah, yeah. The thing is, yeah, like, I just kind of felt like this was removed from reality altogether. Like, like a film like this, I yeah, I mean, like, my parents are divorced, right? But I just, I did not. It had no commentary on anything to do with real people. It
Yeah.
was
And
just characters.
I think there's like notes of, well, notes is like maybe a little bit of like a lightning. I think there's like a lot of kind of sexist aspects
Mm.
too of the way that the things were dealt with. Like I don't, just the fact that, you know,
It's
Anthea gets back with Alex and like and when he's describing her to Max, he's like, "Oh, she's amazing. Like she's so smart and she's intuitive." And she's like, and he's like describing this like amazing woman, right? And then Max is like, "Oh, so like she's like basic and you went with the boring pick." I'm like, "What?" Like he just described like a dynamic person, like this dynamic woman that he's like with, and Max was like, like you should have gone with like that was, I mean, I guess that's not like overtly sexist, but just like it like raised a flag, right? And then later when she stays with him, like there's another like flag being raised. But actually like the moment that I had like the most issue with was when people were talking about like Iris's mother and her relationship with her husband and how like the marriage was bad, and she gets a lot of like blame for the marriage for being, and I quote, a cold bitch. Like what? And when her daughter said that to her, like the vitriol that her daughter said, when it was like, you like your mother was like a victim of this man, like your mother was like just like how many, and it's just so frustrating like to think of like how many stories of like just very real stories and like experiences of women where it's like they date an absentee father or a man who treats them horribly and he's not there for the kids, and she pulls it together and she's there for him and she's there for the family and she keeps it going. And despite, and it's like, oh, so yeah, like she's doing all this work because that's a tremendous amount of work. He's off being famous and having sex with everyone, and then and then the marriage falling apart is like her fault because she's a cold bitch. Like when she slapped her daughter, I was like, I don't support violence, but I would have like, I understand the impulse of like, what did you just say to me? Of like, how dare you? And like I already hated Iris, but I was like, you are irredeemable to me after saying that to your mother for putting up with like that was just like, oh my goodness. And she,
Yeah.
I don't like to talk about that when like she herself just like is like you don't even see her interact with her daughter, like she's not thinking of the best interest of her child throughout. Like she brings up her child, but it's just like you don't think about, you don't like it, that's not, it wasn't like selling to me that her daughter meant anything to her throughout this film too, like even as she's like standing over there like watching her sleep, I'm not sold on like her being that, like at one point she says Alice doesn't need me anymore. Girl, Alice is 8 years old. What are you saying? Like, have you met an 8-year-old? They can
Yeah.
barely read. Like, they're like babies. They're so little. Yeah, like, yes, she needs her mother. Are you crazy?
Yeah.
What? So, like, I don't, like, those are just, like, issues that I had, like, with just the, like, issues and in the relationships where, like, with the mother and Max, I was like, the issue here is that he was terrible. And she's, and now she's like volunteering to look after her for a night and like try to stop her daughter from messing up her marriage, and then later trying to stop her daughter from ruining her marriage. Oh my goodness. I think I
Yeah.
said ruining her marriage twice there, but like, oh my god.
It's okay. I think this film repeats lines as well. Uh, but no, I do agree with. I mean, I definitely felt that as I was watching the film. I was like, you know, like it. I mean, it is directed by a woman, but like it doesn't. It's not like I just yeah, I just felt like it did have like a sort of sexist strain to it, but I will say that I think that's because this film is just confused and it isn't well made, and I've seen plenty of like, poorly made films, particularly like student shorts where, it always seems to reflect badly on the filmmaker. and like I'm sure the director is like a fine person. I just
Yeah.
like while you're
I mean,
making
I don't
something
know
of
if the
this.
director would have been like I don't know, she probably didn't write that. I don't know. Me knowing
She
not that actually much about how production of films
No,
work.
but even if she didn't write it, it's her job to
Yeah,
essentially
that's true.
request the rewrite, to get another writer on board. I mean,
That's
why
true.
even start production? Like, you're in pre-production, it's so low stakes, you haven't committed anything. There's like, there's just no excuse really. I mean, like, fuck it,
Yeah,
like just
that's
write
true.
it yourself. That's what most directors do, is they'll take a draft, they'll make some changes, send it back, and ask for some more, and then it's really, I mean, there's just so many ways to go about it.
Yeah, the mother-daughter relationship to me, or I mean, and then Iris's devotion to her father too after those circumstances, like it did not strike true to like any experiences that I've like heard of or like seen, like in like lived reality. And
Mm.
like I think that's what you mean. It was just like it just felt like the film didn't have that much of an anchor in reality. And like maybe, I mean, maybe Iris is supposed to be kind of like the woman in Breathless or something, who like I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Breathless, but it's like not exactly a feminist film, you know?
Mm.
Like the portrayal of like the female character in that is like maybe something that the filmmakers were kind of keeping in mind when they wrote the women in this film, but like to make all three of them these kind of like either pushovers or just like I don't like I did have an issue with like the way women were written and like spoken about in the film. Um but I actually want to something else like I know like the Breathless is like a really kind of central reference to the film, but another one is A Visit from the Goon Squad, the book that Alex's
Yeah, yeah.
fiance is reading, Anthea, and then also Iris is reading it. And it's a really famous book. The sequel just came out recently. It's a really famous book. A lot of people have read it. It's about the music industry, and it's like I think the book kind of like or the film plays on like the structure of the book a little, where the book is it spans over different times. That's why the kind of time is a goon quote was like spoken multiple times. And it's following the lives of all these people that were like formerly part of this like punk scene. I don't remember where, but they're formerly part of this punk scene. And then it goes like back and forth kind of in the future, and you see like the way that their lives are all kind of interwoven. It's kind of one of those narratives. And so two of the central characters who pop up in a lot of the stories are this record producer named Lou Klein, and then his like protege whose name is Benny. I don't really remember his last name. I read this last year and in high school. Anyways, Lou Klein, he's kind of I think who Max's character is based off of. Like obviously they translated it from like instead of being a big music producer, um Max is a movie critic, but he like Blue is this character who, did a lot of coke and slept with lots of younger women, and even as he aged, he had all these affairs and he had all these different children with, different mothers that that kids that he just didn't really pay that much attention to or treat very well. So kind of like Iris, even though some of them stayed more devoted to him than others. And then kind of in the end, he gets old and I don't remember if he dies. He might die in the book. Sorry, spoiler alert to the Goose God. But like some of the people like from his past kind of come visit him, and they just like look at him and are kind of oh, it's bizarre to see like this guy who is like this kind of sex icon, like music industry mogul, like now on his deathbed and like reaping what he sowed, kind of like being pretty sad and alone. And I hope I'm remembering this book correctly because I did read it a while ago. And then Benny is like his kind of protege who starts out as this like kid in the punk scene who's like really talented and super hopeful, and then he is taken under Lou's wing and then kind of shoots up into success. And then, for like different issues of um, like being like a musical purist, being ostracized for his race, like entering a marriage that didn't work out. Like he kind of falls from his days of glory, and then he's like a mediocre producer for a while, and then at the end he works it out and he kind of gets his credibility back. So I think that that's kind of who Alex was based off of, because Alex and Max have this kind of like mentor relationship and affection for each other. And but where a visit from the Goon Squad like kind of differs from the film in my perspective is that like Lou's death is like so different than Max's death, where Max's is like he dies on his terms, surrounded by people who like against all odds do really love him, and I maybe arguably Lou did too, but they weren't people that were close to him in any meaningful way. They weren't his family, so I'd say, you know, Max gets a better ending, I think, than Lou. And then Alex is just like a slime bag throughout versus Benny the Proto kind of sorts his shit out a little bit. Like he makes his life better. But Alex, you just like watch him get in the car with the woman on the train or whatever with the woman he's not supposed to marry, and you're just like, oh, okay, like that's terrible. I like the you know she doesn't deserve this, and he is like he's only there because he couldn't convince Iris to run away. Like
Yeah,
like that's so sad. Like that's not
his
character growth for
replacement
him.
didn't work out.
Yeah,
So
and like Iris, like I'm not sure if Iris is supposed to be settling or doing what's right for her family or like realizing what she really wants. Like I'm really confused, honestly, as to like her reasoning. Even though like I think not leaving her family was like kind of what I was thinking would be the best. I don't know. I didn't really want her to run away with Alex, but but you get the sense that she's like that there's character development at the end where Alex is like stagnant. So I think it's like, I mean, maybe I'm like reading a lot into all the Goon Squad references, but like the whole time is Goon thing, the whole parallels, like there's really heavy parallels between the characterization of Lou, Benny, and then Max and Alex. And it's just like, it's just a little confusing to me the way, I mean, I guess, you know, the film's not going to exactly take every storyline from the book, but like the kind of meaning that I took away from the book is so different than how I felt the movie played out. And that's just something that I thought was interesting about the inclusion of that reference.
oh yeah, that is interesting. You know, I've not read the book. I mean, the film didn't make me care to read the book. I,
It's not my
you know,
favorite book ever, to be
um,
honest.
yeah, but I think that it's an interesting point that you brought up because of the sort of confused direction. We were talking about, you know, what, like, we're talking about these references. We're almost leaning into, like, you know, how was this film, like, you know, made, you know, what influenced it, uh, just to get any kind of framing with which to analyze it. I mean, I don't, yeah, but I don't know if there are any, I don't know if there are any answers, you know, with this line. I hope I've, do you agree with what I just said?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I do.
yeah, I don't know, but, you know, you did remind me of one important thing that we should discuss. And that's sort of like, I mean, the ending was kind of like moving, not for like, I mean, okay, spoiler, all
Yeah,
right.
major spoiler here.
So Max, like well, okay, I mean, I think we mentioned this already. So
Oh, did we?
Max
Oops.
dies. Okay. But here's the weird thing is
But
that
he chooses to.
he chooses
I
to.
didn't I didn't give that part away.
No, you did say he dies on his terms. So
Oh shoot. I'm
it's
sorry
fine, it's fine.
guys.
Who
Here,
who
edit
cares?
me saying spoiler alert into the right before. It'll flow so naturally. It'll be me talking a mile a minute and then spoiler alert. Anyways,
Uh,
back to your
I,
point.
I don't think it really I don't think it really matters, to be honest. Like I don't know if this is a film you spoil. Um it, I think that Max, I mean, like he wants to die, and so he's applied for it. You know, under maid. And so he's got 10 days, but rather than do that, the characters give him a potion and kill him immediately. um, which I thought was a little bit offensive.
Well, yeah,
Uh,
Jeff can say goodbye to his career as a doctor because he is going to jail.
yeah, no, like that's outrageous. This is a doctor. What happened to the oath? What happened to all of that? It's just, never mind. We're just killing the elderly now. Um,
Well,
I just,
it's like, yeah, I mean, there needs to be a process. Like, it can't be like, oh, I'm a doctor. I can perform this like really emotionally serious. Yeah, just wait the 10 days, man. Go through it the right way with the system.
but yeah, no, that was really weird. It reminded me a
The
little bit
potion.
of. It's a little bit like a Hollywood film in that, like, a Hollywood film, like, you'd expect it to have that Hollywood ending where something very, very unrealistic happens, but hopefully you're kind of swept with the tone of the film and you kind of accept it. I don't think I ever do, but like, take for instance, this might not be a great example, but what's eating Gilbert Grape? This
Hmm.
is a spoiler.
I haven't
They
seen it, but I'll live.
Okay, I mean, so it ends with them burning down their family home. I'm not going to explain why they do it, but
Cool.
they just do it, and it just seems like, so. Okay, I'll tell you why they do it. So they do it because their old mother is just too fat to be taken down the stairs. She's not really, but like, they don't want her to be paraded around, like, just like their neighbors. Well, they actually live in a farm in the middle of nowhere. I don't really get it. They don't want, like, they just don't want to, like, insult her memory. And so they just give her like, their funeral pyre is just the house that she lived in.
Oh, was she already dead, or did they burn her alive?
No, she's already dead.
Oh, okay,
Um,
good.
but it's sort of like that grandiose kind of Hollywood, like, ending, which doesn't make any sense. I mean, you don't burn down a house, like, just like,
Yeah.
the woman's dead, just take her downstairs.
Well, it's just
Um,
like a reminder that nothing happens when the film stops rolling. Like they're not going to be homeless because they're actors.
right, exactly. So, I mean, I think that we were supposed to take it like, you know, like a Hollywood sense, like, oh, it's just, he's dead, he wanted to die. Let's not think too much about the morality of this and the fact that we're unqualified to perform this procedure. Um, but it just didn't. I don't know. It's just so weird. And then, in spite of all of this, remember when we started this, we did say, because we were kind of, we had to say something nice, uh, we were moved by like that very end, just a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
well, I do think that the actor who played Max too, I think that he gave the most standout performance in the film to me. Like I think he was a good actor, and so when he like I he sold it at the end when he was dying, I thought, which helped.
yeah, he like, all the actors, I think, were very, like, they demonstrated like a certain amount of range. They were very good in that sense, but I just felt like the direction just kind of made me, like, initially I was just thinking, like, do these, like, do these actors just not have chemistry? I couldn't figure I almost It was like I couldn't figure it out, like, why it was so, bizarre. Like, it has all of these, like, little, like, things that kind of are working, but together, like, they don't make any sense.
Yeah, I think that like the film was very ambitious, and there was like a lot of emotional notes that they really wanted to hit. There's a lot of topics they wanted to talk about, whether it be like time and film and the impact it has on relationships and the impact that it has on sex and what is sex in a marriage and what is abuse in a marriage and infidelity, and like there's so many things that they want to talk about, and there's lots of things that they want you to feel, but it's just it's a little bit like too much. Like if they took something kind of if they toned something down and focused more on like a little bit of a deeper character study, maybe like yeah, I can kind of see what you're saying about like the direction was like it was just that since there's so much they were really trying to tie in Breathless, trying to tie in A Visit from the Goon Squad. It's kind of like I mean, maybe I'm giving too much credit to like the roles that Breathless and The Visit from the Goon Squad actually had on like the pathways of the film. But generally, if a film references another film, it's for a reason, or if it references a book, it's for a
Mm.
reason. So like to pick two different things that like are different. Like I really, saying I'm gonna make a film that's linked to Breathless, I'd go cool. Or I'm gonna make a film linked to It Was from the Goon Squad, cool. To do both, I would say, what is the connection between those two things? And that's a lot to take on. That's
Yeah.
that's a lot for it to take on. And there's a lot of really really talented people that were on the set. Like when I was looking at kind of the cast and the actors and like the crew and stuff, there's lots of like people who have made some really cool stuff. I just think that the project was just like so big that I don't know if the writing kept up, and then if the writing can't keep up, and then it was trying to kind of be like a small indie film at the same time. It was doing these, like as you were saying, Hollywood tropes, and I think that's kind of where it stumbled over itself. But like there is like heart left in it, like I do think that there's like you can see the effort that went into the film. And I don't want to, like I do have grievances with this film, but I don't want to discount that there was a lot of things in it that were like that are cool, and that like, the film is filled with love.
I do get the sense though, and mind you, like I feel this way about pretty much any film I see. That I can see the effort and I appreciate it. But I do think that if you think that this film has like it shows heart and effort, you feel that about any film. I
It
just
didn't seem lazy to me. I think that where I'd say I don't see that things is in a film that was lazy, or in a film that's like that wasn't actually focused. Like I think the film cared about the relationships of its protagonists. I just don't think that the execution was there. So I do see heart in it. I don't think there's heart in every single film. Give me
okay,
some credit, man. Come
okay,
on.
okay, 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 fair enough. I I do think that this film, yeah, it tried to do like a lot of things, but I think, but I when I made my remark that the direction was lacking, I wasn't thinking so big picture. Though that's also true. I mean, the direction big picture wise is also kind of lacking, but I meant like just the small, just like within a conversation, like I mentioned, this guy, like just dismisses this his ex-wife and the harm that he caused her, and then they go back to sort of like this sort of flirty, back and forth, and in that sense, like no matter how an actor will say their lines, I will just sort of feel like something is wrong, right? I'll just instinctively feel like, I'm looking at an uncanny valley effect, you know? And that, I mean, that just like, it's, yeah, I mean, that there
Yeah,
is
no,
a,
that was weird. I like it. Part of the reason could have just been like trying to show why these people might have gotten married. Which is something I kind of appreciate, because I didn't really get the same sense of like I didn't feel as much of the chemistry between like Iris and Jeff. Like they kind of, I think they kind of tried to do a similar thing of like, oh, giving you a little glimpse to why they got together when they had the conversation about like, oh, back in the day we watched this movie and had awesome sex, but now our sex is on the calendar. Like maybe that's kind of the same, like a little bit of like awkward exposition almost,
yeah.
or like an awkward introduction into their relationship, that yeah, maybe that's kind of one of the like issues that you're
Like
talking.
so there's a moment where Jeff says, so like Jeff reminds Iris very early on to select the tiles because they're doing renovations. And then, almost like for the audience's behalf, he leans down to his daughter and says, I can't wait for the renovations to be over so that we can move back into our old house. So that, like we really know that they don't live here. They live, it's just like moments like that where, they repeat themselves.
Yeah, that might have
And
been a good line for Alice to say.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it just kind of felt like, hey, 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 here, pay attention. They don't live here, they
Yeah.
live elsewhere.
Yeah, it might have been sneakier, or like not sneakier, but like less noticeable. Like they might have been able to sneak it in a little bit better if they're like Alice kind of said, "Oh, I want to go home," because she
No,
didn't have very many lines in the film. Like that's I wish that she had a bigger presence.
I no, actually, I don't think they needed to add any extra lines. You know, it's one of those things where, like, just for this for a film, like, it's good enough that the character, mentions the bathroom tiles, and then the next scene she's looking at the bathroom tiles, and then that's that. We don't even have any dialogue that specifically mentions the renovations. It's just sort of implied. She
Yeah.
kind of has like some kind of backstory, and you can fill in more things. I just felt like there was a lot of time spent on Iris, sorry, not Iris, Anthea and Alex, fucking, but not really getting to know like why they got together. Like it just felt like a very hollow relationship where, yeah, no, it just so much time spent on two characters and yet very little characterization.
Yeah. Um, I do have one thing that I really want to shout out that gave me lots of joy in this film, and that is the music. I
Yes,
did think it was like a little weird that they're like, oh, this band might be the next big thief. Because I was like, I'm not sure what it means to be the next big thief. Like, and I was thinking like, oh, that must be like a Canadian reference, but I looked it up and I don't think big thieves they don't seem Canadians. Like that was like a little bit of a weird thing for me. But the band that the kind of like plot gets kickstarted around it where Alex is going to go see this new up and coming band. And this is another parallel actually between Alex's character and A Visit from the Goon Squad, where again, like I think he's kind of like Benny, who's this like music producer looking to find like raw talent and stuff. But anyways, the band that is featured in the film, they're called the Neighborhood Watch, and they're actually like a Toronto indie band that I've been listening to since high school. Like I'm not like a total connoisseur of like their discography, but they've got some songs that are really good that I've been listening to like since I was a teenager, not knowing that they were from Toronto. I found that out kind of recently, and I actually saw on Instagram they're posting about being in a movie, and I didn't realize like when we started watching that this is the one. So when I saw that, I was like, that's cool. And when they're in the movie, they're good. They're really good. Like that,
yeah,
which doesn't surprise me, right? But like they were good, and I really liked seeing them in the movie, and I wished that we got to hear just a little bit more of their music because I really liked it. And then what I also thought was fun was this is like another kind of Toronto reference that I did thoroughly enjoy was that the show that they kind of go see like the climactic performance is at the Monarch Tavern, which is a killer venue. Like I really love the Monarch Tavern. I've seen some great bands there. I've seen the Paranoids, Lily. Those are both like really sick punk bands from California. My boyfriend's band has played there. There's like lots of like cool bands playing at the Monarch. It's a great venue. So if anyone's listening and they want to see some live music, check it out. And I also used to work before I like used to go to the Monarch Tavern as like a music listener. I used to work at the sandwich shop right next door. So when I was watching like Alex try to convince Iris to like run away with him, there's like flashing lights in the background. I was like, that's the sign from the sandwich shop where I used to work. I was like, man, I wish they shot this when I was working there so I could have met the band and met Alan Hocko, who's like a pretty cool established actor. He's from Newfoundland. Like my family's from Newfoundland, so I would have thought that was so cool if I got to meet anyway, so like major shout out to the film for featuring the Monarch Tavern. And like major shout out to the Neighborhood Watch because like they're awesome and it was really fun to like those were like moments that were just like again to like the Toronto music lover that I am. I loved that. It was really cool to like see like this like kind of community that I'm in on the big screen, like in a film, even though like other aspects of the film weren't my favorite. I thought that was awesome. So
no, I mean
I had to
that's
say that. I had to say that because
no, no,
it
fair
just
enough.
truly filled me with joy.
No, I think that's really useful, and I mentioned film students as being like somebody who could watch who could glean something from this film. Yeah, I mean if you're from Toronto, you might really appreciate it, right? So yeah, do you remember like this is being played at the uh
Is
it
it being played at the Paradise?
oh, the film? Oh, that would be apt. But I think it's having its Texas premiere at
Okay.
the Austin Film Festival on Friday, October 27th at the Galaxy Theater. So if you're around there, you know, you can check out the film in spite of everything we've said about.
Yeah, and go into it with the more, I mean, I don't even know. We might have closed your mind, and
Might
I'm
have
sorry
spoiled the
if we
movie
have. And we
completely.
might have spoiled, if you've made it this far and you go to the Austin premiere, you're a badass. Like, you're cool. Uh, because, like, I hope we haven't been too harsh. I really hope we haven't been too harsh. Maybe that's the fun of going on a podcast, is that you say things that are harsh, or maybe that's like, I don't know, or maybe we're just like some assholes. Like, I'm in my bedroom right now just talking into my
You're just
computer.
talking
So if
shit.
you want to like listen to this podcast and disregard us and go to this movie and watch it and love it, then power to you truly. But I just, yeah, not my favorite movie ever.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did. You know, I mean, yeah, like I think that's a good place to end off on.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'll just call it here then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
This has been Celluloid Chatroom. I'm Madeline.
and I'm Sahan. We don't have a catchphrase or anything, so yeah,
No, but hopefully see you next time.
yeah.
All right. Bye.